It's really great to see everybody. So welcome formally to our daily Parsha. Sandrine, it's great to see you. Donna, it's great to see you. Matt, it's great to see you. Joy, it's great to see you. Stephanie, it's great to see you. Where's Max? Max is around?
He had to take the dog to the vet.
Oh, okay. Hope everything is good.
Everything's okay.
Okay.
A little itchy.
Got it. Okay, well, everything should be good, and tell him that we missed him. Okay, so let's jump in. We have a new Torah portion. It's Monday, and that means one thing. No, we don't have the Monday blues. We have the Monday excitement because it's a new Parsha, a new Torah portion. The Torah portion for this week is Korach. Korach. It's pretty amazing how we have back-to-back portions with such. I say this, with a little hesitation, but let me just say it, with such villainous stories. There are a lot of, these stories are, last week Shlach with the spies and the 40 years of wandering that resulted from that. This week Korach, and we'll talk about that soon, exactly what his deal was. Very villainous stories, very dark, negative stories, but that are explained in completely different light through a Hasidic, through a mystical lens. So I'm excited to jump into this story. This week's story also, like last week, we'll take multi-parts, multi-sessions to cover the story. So there's a lot to talk about. So let's jump straight in. Number one, who was Korach? Korach, that was his name, Korach, K-O-R-A-C-H, Korach. Korach was a cousin of Moses. He was Korach. His father was Yitzhar. Yitzhar's father was Kahas or Kahat, and Kahat's father was Levi. So he was from the tribe of Levi. He was a Levite. He was a cousin of Moses. Now, here's the problem. The family of Aaron, they were the Kohanim, the priests. The family of Moses, they were the Levites, right? They were not only the family of Moses, but all of the Levites. They were Levites. They had a job in the temple or in the tabernacle. We explained that the Kahat family, they were the ones that were carrying the ark and carrying the holy items. So this fellow Korach, he was part of the crew. He was definitely plugged in. He wasn't just an ordinary Israelite. He was plugged in. Well, as the Torah portion tells us, the first thing that we get introduced to Korach here is the fact that he stirs a mutiny, a revolt, a coup against the leadership of Moses and Aaron. This, of course, is not a positive thing. This, of course, is a devastating thing. But let's read it inside. What I'm going to do is I'm about to share with you my screen, and you'll be able to see the actual story itself from the Torah script. So let's do that. Share screen, Torah reading. Boom, we don't need that here. Okay. Numbers chapter 16, verse number 1. Well, okay, you have the English Korah. We're going to stick with the Hebrew. Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kahat, the son of Levi. So he's a Levite. That's his lineage. He's from the tribe of Levi right there. So what did he do? He took himself to one side, along with Datan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Pelet, descendants of Reuben. So basically, he and these others took themselves, I love this phrase, took himself to one side. That means that he separated himself from the community. Everyone's on the same page, more or less. People are complaining and kvetching, but he pulled away and created a breakaway group. They confronted, verse 2, they confronted Moses together with 250 men from the children of Israel, chieftains of the congregation, representatives of the assembly, men of repute. So these were all people that were well respected in their own right. And they assembled against Moses and Aaron and said to them, listen to this, against Moses and Aaron, you take too much upon yourselves, for the entire congregation are all holy, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you raise yourselves above the Lord's assembly? This was a very strong accusation. Essentially saying that why do we need spiritual leadership if everybody is holy and God is in their midst, right? If all the people are holy and the Lord is in their midst, in other words, amongst everybody, so then why do you raise yourself above the Lord's assembly? Why is there this notion of spiritual leadership if everybody is holy? Now think about it. It's a good question. It's a good question, right? Who has a soul? Who has an neshama? What's the answer? Everybody. And what's a soul? A piece of God. So if God is connected with everybody, so then what makes Moses Moses, and what makes Aaron Aaron? Are they any more connected? That was his question. His question is, what makes Moses and Aaron more holy or more special than everybody else? Everybody is holy and everybody is special. It's a good question. This they went to the people with. This is what we would call a populist uprising. This was power to the people. Let's reclaim leadership back from the few, from Moses and Aaron. Let's give it to everybody. Everybody is holy. Everybody is divine. Everybody is precious. Now, here's what we know. Here's what we know behind the scenes. We know this because we know this. What was Korach's agenda? What did he want? Unmute yourself if you can imagine. What do you think he wanted? Help me out. What do you think he wanted? Either unmute yourself or chat.
Power?
Yeah.
Responsibility, maybe?
Well, so in throughout history, whenever there was a populist uprising, we have to have power to the people. What happened in the aftermath of that is that certain individuals appointed themselves or were appointed as the leaders of that, and they typically ended up as much in power and in control as the ones that they overthrew. Correct? Is that a correct factual historical statement? Yes. Populist uprisings always end up with the same type of deal. Remember Animal Farm? Yeah, there's an uprising, but still against the humans, but it still ends up power consolidated in the hands of the few. Right? All animals are created equal, but some animals are created more equal than others in that famous line. So what was Korach's agenda? Korach says, he expresses a really egalitarian, a real democratic assertion. Power to the people. Everyone's holy. There are no distinctions. But what's his real agenda? He wants to be in charge. Because if you're the one that leads the populist uprising, well then shouldn't you be the one to... Because I gave you this idea, right? So I'm the one leading the charge, so I'll be the leader of this, but you're all special, but I'll be your leader. So therefore, it's really the same thing. It's just somebody who's envious of power. We know this. We know that as a cousin of Moses and Aaron, Korach felt slighted. He felt looked over. He felt ordinary. He looked at his cousins. He's like, we used to hang out Thanksgiving together. You remember that? Why did you guys, that was a joke, right? But how did you guys end up? You're the Moses, you're the Aaron, you're the leader, you're the high priest. How'd that happen? We're the same lineage, same blood, same family, essentially. So that's not fair. He wanted to be the leader. This was entirely an attempt to get rid of Moses and Aaron and install himself as the leader. So here's what you have to ask yourself. If his message to the people was honest, right? If he was transparent, what would his message be? I want to be in control. Help me get rid of Moses and Aaron. To which the response would probably be like, why? That's a weird request. Like, why should we do that? So he didn't say that. He couched it in a different form. What did he say? He said, everyone's holy. There shouldn't be any leadership, but, once this settles down, I'll let you know what to do. Because anyway, I'm leading this populist uprising. So anyway, I'll be the one to lead this, in the future. That's how he couched it. So the first lesson of this week's Torah portion is listen to what people are really saying. Listen to what they're really saying. Don't just listen to the words they're saying. Understand the underlying motive behind what they're saying. If Korach is telling the people, you're all holy, you're all special, be very suspicious. What is your agenda, Mr. Korach? What are you getting at? What's your end game? Let me ask you a question. Would you oppose Korach? Would you be opposed to us making you the leader? No, not at all. That would actually be a great idea. All right, now we know what's going on. Now we know your agenda. Your true agenda is not that everyone's holy and everyone's special. Your agenda is you want to be in charge. Okay, so be honest then. In life, it's very important to be transparent. It's very important to be honest. Can that lead to general cynicism and distrust? Let's put it this way. If someone is dismantling a Moses and an Aaron, I think they should be subject to some scrutiny and you want to call it cynicism, I would say some transparency. You're coming to me, right? Let's say I'm amongst the people, right? I'm just, your average Joe, and I don't, I don't know the motives. You come to me and say, hey, can you sign this petition? We want to overthrow Moses and Aaron. Now, I know Moses to be Moses. He was pretty awesome leader. I know Aaron to be a very holy guy who loves everybody and always seeking peace, to create peace between people. These are great role models. You're telling me that we should get rid of them? What's your agenda? Like, what's the purpose? Is that cynical? I don't know if it's cynical. I think Korach is cynical. I think Korach is the one who's cynical here. Korach is the one who's manipulating people, and the one who's trying to edge in and trying to get rid of holy leadership by announcing that everyone's holy, trying to manipulate the emotions of the people for his diabolical or for his desire for power. So I think the first lesson is, as we apply it, not necessarily be cynical and distrusting of everybody, but I think there's an important message here, which is, always look to seek what is really the underlying motive. What's really going on here? Is that going to lead us to asking more questions? Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. Now, on this, the Rebbe takes a positive lesson. I'm giving you typical lessons or traditional lessons from the opening of this Torah portion. The Rebbe has another way of looking at it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says we can learn a beautiful lesson from Korach. Look at the lesson. He was not satisfied with his position. He was striving for something more. He wanted more connection, more responsibility, more holiness. He wanted to ascend. Now, the way it manifested itself was a grab for power and an attempted overthrow and coup of Moses and Aaron, which wasn't good the way he went about it, but the core desire that he had, which is for something more than what he currently was, that's a positive, and that we can each take a positive lesson from Korach, which is don't be satisfied with where you're at, always strive for something more. That's a positive lesson that Korach teaches us. So how he went about it, who he was targeting, how it all played out. Okay, don't learn from all the details of the ambition, but the ambition itself, the idea that we should always strive for something more. We shouldn't just be satisfied with the status quo. That is something that we can learn from Korach. Even from a Korach, we can learn. Now, I want to continue by focusing. I mentioned this, I think, Friday. I want to talk about the spelling of Korach's name in Hebrew. What I'm going to do is make my screen even bigger than it is. It's really big now. Can you guys see the letters Korach? The letters that form the Hebrew word Korach? Yes? Hold on. Can you guys see? I highlighted in blue. Thumbs up if you can see it. Yes? Okay, good. So Korach, there are dots. Dots are the vowels. Don't worry about the vowels right now. I want to focus on the actual consonants, the letters of his name. He has 3 letters in his name. Kuf, Reish, and Ches. Kuf, Reish, Ches. Korach. What's interesting about these 3 letters is, as the Kabbalists explain, and the Hasidic masters develop, is that each of these 3 letters is a distortion of the letter Hey. Now, what does the letter Hey look like? The letter Hey looks like that right there. I just highlighted the Hey of Yitzhar, random Hey. The Hey has two lines, a top line and a line on the right. Maybe that's the left, the way I'm drawing. I'm not sure how my fingers are going right or left, but I know how it's going for me, but I don't know how you're seeing it. Anyway, there's a line at the top, and then one more at the right side, and then there's a gap, a space, and then a foot on the left side. Again, I'm highlighting the Hey right in the middle of the page. That is the letter Hey. Top, right are connected, and then a little bit on the bottom left, like a hanging line, a hanging foot, if you will. Korach, each letter is a distortion of, you know what? It's going to be easier if I draw it. Let me do this. Let me stop share. Let me reshare a whiteboard. Let's do this. I'm gonna draw it out for you. Okay, this is gonna work out even nicer. Hopefully. Oh, 1 second. I don't like the way that came out. Okay, that's the Hey. Now, here's Korach. Ready? The Hey is on top. I'm now drawing Korach. That is the Hebrew word Korach on the bottom. So Hey on the top, Korach on the bottom. Each letter of the name Korach is a distortion of the letter Hey. So Hey is going to be our template. That's going to be like, it says that God created the world with the letter Hey. Hey represents the last letter of God's name. It represents the Shekhinah. It represents Malchut, the divine presence, the energy that God invests in this world. Hey is a very special letter. Hey is a holy letter. Hey, as we said recently in one of the classes, is a pure breath. Hey, the Hey sound is pure breath without any of the other undulations that make letters. Is a pure Hey sound. So Hey is a very pure and holy letter. Korach, each of the letters is a distortion. So let's look at the first letter, which is the Kuf. Okay? The first letter from right to left. So it starts off the same. The top and the right side are the same. But then the bottom leg goes below the line. You see how it doesn't stop kind of at that median line? It just keeps on going further. So that's the Kuf. So it has the same leg as the Hey, but it's all the way down. The Reish, the second letter in his name, is also, it starts off the same, top and right, but it's missing altogether the leg. So in the Kuf, the first letter, it's got too long a leg. In the Reish, there's no leg. And in the last letter, the Ches, right, the leg is not a leg at all. It's connected straight to the top. So it's not a when I say leg, it's like it's not a hanging, separate piece, right? It's connected straight to the top. So you have a line, a horizontal line at the top, and then two verticals that are connected. So there's no empty space at all. So all three letters of Korach are a distortion, if you will, that play off of the pure letter Hey. Does what I'm saying make sense so far? Yes, visually? Okay, so what does it mean? So Kabbalah explains like this. There are three dimensions of the human experience. We call these the garments of the soul. And they are machshava, dibur, and maaseh. Thought, speech, and action. Thought, speech, and action. These are the three ways in which human beings express themselves. Thought, we express ourselves to ourselves. Thought is what you're thinking about, so it's awareness, consciousness to yourself, but it's still a revelation, right? You're still thinking about it, so you're processing it, so you're aware of it, but it's still internal. Speech is how you move your thoughts outside to others, how you transmit them, express them, project them to others. And action is what you do about it, is how you implement your ideas and your words, how you implement them and make a difference in this world. So, in a pure formula, it looks like the letter He. So this right here is the pure formula. Why? Because you have the thought on top. So the He on the top line is, I'm writing T for thought. Okay, excuse me here. T for thought. It's hard to write on the vertical, so I apologize. Speech is here, and action is there. Thought, speech, and action. So your thought, right, that's your ideas, and your speech are connected. So you have ideas, and you express those ideas, and your action is guided by your thoughts and your speech. It's not connected because there's a gap between your ideas and your words and your action, but the gap only means that it's drawing from it, but you understand that there's a distinction between your thought and speech and your action. In other words, you understand that action is a radically different element than thought and speech. Thought and speech are kind of like the more spiritual powers of the person, whereas action is the more concrete version of it. So you need action. Action is critical in the world of action that we live in. We need to do things to make an impact on this world. So you need action. But at the same time, we know that action itself could get us into trouble, right? We can do things that aren't so holy. So we need that framework of thought and speech, the higher framework of our ideals and the way we express those ideals, right? We need that framework to kind of keep the action in the right context, but the action should never think that it can start dictating to the thought and speech what's right and wrong. And you'll see soon how each letter of Korach's name represents a distortion of this perfect balance. So again, this top letter He is what I'll call balance. Why is it balanced? Because thought and speech are aligned and action has its place. Let's look at the kuf, right? Let's look at this right here. The kuf has a line, the action line is way below the line. You know what that means? That represents someone whose behavior is not at all being regulated by their thought and speech. In other words, their ideals are up here. There's a framework that the mind sets out, but when it comes to action, it goes below the line. It goes very low, meaning that the person is not being bound by their ideas and by what they represent, what they purport to believe in. So you can have, you have a good values, a good value system. You can even, you preach good values. But when it comes to action, it could be in a way that's not at all bound by that. It goes beneath the line. That's unhealthy. That's not kosher. Resh, the middle letter. Let's talk about the middle letter now. This is also a distortion. This represents a state in which you have your ideals and you represent them. You have ideals that you believe in and you even preach them, but there's no action. There's no backing up of anything. There's no talk is cheap and thought is cheap and there's no action whatsoever. So that's missing completely the left little leg, the action piece of it. So again, in the first letter, the kuf, you have action that goes beneath the line. It goes, when I say the line, I mean if you had line paper, sorry for not explaining that before. If you had line paper, so your kuf would be like in between those lines, but the bottom leg would go all the way down beneath that line into the next line. So it's like it's behavior that goes way below any boundaries that should have. Reish is just totally missing. That's kind of like a hypocrisy where you're not even standing up for what you believe in altogether. It's not like you're doing something that goes against it. There's just no follow-up. There's no follow-through. There's no action. So that's, again, a distortion. And the final letter, which is the ches, is where your action is touching the thought and speech. And you might think, well, that's a good thing. That sounds like a good reality where your action is so connected that it's actually connected. But no, that represents a state where the action thinks that it can dictate to the thought and speech what is right and what is wrong. That's where that's the most mischievous and most devious one of all. Because when there's nothing, there's no action. Okay, so there's no action. When the action is going in a completely negative place, fine. But here, the action is saying, no, the action should be elevated to the level of thought and speech. And what that means is, when it comes to, I'll bring this back spiritually to the story of Korach. Korach says, everyone is holy. Everyone is holy. Everyone can do a mitzvah. So we don't need spiritual leadership. Again, he wanted to be it, but just taking his words at face value, we don't need spiritual leadership from Moses and Aaron because everyone is holy. You know what that means? He was saying get rid of this. He was saying get rid of this, the thought and the speech, because everyone can do a mitzvah. Moses can wrap tefillin. I can also wrap tefillin. You can also wrap tefillin. Moses can eat kosher, observe the Sabbath, give tzedakah. You and I can do the same thing. Our actions are equivalent. Right? It's all the same. And action is just as important as everything else. So we don't need Moses and Aaron because we have this corridor of action. That is where he made a mistake. Because the only time action is holy. I wonder if I can undo what I just did. Let's see. Let's undo some of this. Yeah. The only time action is holy. The only time this is actually holy is when it recognizes its place within these boundaries of the thought and speech. It's only when it recognizes its place within that is truly holy. So to give you a very simple example, going to work, eating, physical activities, right? So we need to do them. Okay, we need to go to work, we need to earn money, we need to eat, all of these things are necessary. At the same time, Judaism encourages us to do it with a certain mindfulness, with a certain kavanah, with a certain intentionality, with the intention of I'm not just working to earn money to get more money, but I'm doing so for a higher purpose. I'm not just eating to satisfy my body, I'm doing so for a higher purpose. That implies, and these are things you've heard me say countless times, but that implies something very important. That there's something higher that you're striving toward. When we talk about eating for a higher purpose, you know what is implied by that? That there is something called a higher purpose. And when you say those words, higher purpose, you know what you're saying? Higher. You're making a judgment of higher versus lower. And what you're saying is that eating for the sake of eating is not a higher purpose, but this is the higher purpose. And therefore there needs to be this gap between what I do and what I'm doing it for. Because what I'm doing is not in and of itself holy. What I'm doing it for is the holy framework. That's where thought and speech, that's the holy framework. So when I do the action aligned with the holy intention, then I've elevated to become holy. But when I think that my action in and of itself carries the same holiness as the purpose for what it's done for, then I'm missing the boat. So in short, I'm trying to represent a very powerful Kabbalistic idea about the mistake of Korach in the very limited time that we have, but I want to kind of summarize it in short. Korach said we don't need spiritual leadership to be holy, to be spiritual. And the response to that is you absolutely need spiritual leadership to be holy. Because without the spiritual leadership, how do you know what holy is? What are you striving toward? To give you another very personal example, when I say very personal, an example that you can relate to hopefully immediately. We have opportunities in which we break away from our work and our eating and our other physical activities to study Torah and to pray, so that we align with something higher, so that when we resume our activities, it's then done for a higher purpose. If you do away with the higher, if you say, you know what, who needs to study Torah? If work can also be a holy activity, so then I don't need to study Torah, let me work all day, then it ceases to be holy. Are you with me on that? If a person says, work can be holy, right? I learned in class, work can be holy, I can work for a higher purpose, so then I'm going to cut out altogether all Torah study, all prayer, and all meditation. All I'm going to do is throw myself into work, because work can also be holy. You know what's going to happen within a very short amount of time? It's not going to be holy anymore. The only reason why it could be holy is if you have the higher stuff, the higher intention. If you also have that higher energy, and then you do the work for the higher purpose, so then you're aligning the action with something higher, but that remains objectively higher, then you've transformed it into a higher experience. If you draw the line like the final ches over here, the final line in Korach's name, if you draw it all the way up, right, this one right here, draw it all the way up, then you've removed that sense of reverence, that sense of holiness, that sense of higher than, and you're elevating work to Torah study, then you're going to work with the same deference as Torah study, then it's not going to be holy anymore. The only time it's holy is if you know the gap and you're able to elevate your work to that, if you're able to do the work and have a higher intention. But if work becomes divine, then that necessarily pulls it out of that type of balance. So hopefully what I said today makes sense. Tomorrow I'm going to continue on this and share with you a few dramatic, specific challenges that Korach had to Moses. And let me explain what those, we're going to go through them tomorrow, but let me just give you an outline of that. Basically, Korach challenged Moses, on elements of areas of Jewish law. Korach said, Moses, what would be the law in such and such case? Moses gave the answer, and Korach says, you see, that's why you need to be thrown out, because you're giving wrong answers. We're going to explore what specifically those cases were, what the challenge was, what Moses said, what Korach disagreed with, and why it represents exactly what we spoke about today of the lack of, in Korach, the lack of balance between what's higher and what's lower. So in short, in summary, today hopefully what came across was two important things. Number one, when somebody tries to overthrow Moses and Aaron and says that they're doing so for such and such reason, ask them for transparency. What's your real agenda? If this were to go through, would you put your hat in the ring to be the leader? Okay, then let's discuss that as your motivation. So number one, transparency. And for us, that means if you have an agenda, right, and you're represented in a different way, then that's not necessarily so kosher. You got to represent yourself, true intentions. There's a whole area in Jewish law called genevas das, which means stealing someone's mind or misrepresenting oneself. It's a prohibition. You're not allowed to misrepresent. If you go to a store and you have no intention on buying in that store, you're just trying it out and then going to buy it on Amazon or Zappos, right? Shoes, you're just trying it on for fit. You have to be upfront, because otherwise, it's a Korach. It's pulling a Korach. It's misrepresenting. It's saying one thing or representing one thing, but really having different intentions. So that's number one. And the second point was the balance. Action or the physical world can only be transformed into something holy when holiness represents the ideal. When we take away the ideal and we say, well, the world can also be holy, so let's just jump into the world, and we don't have that higher objective, then we're not going to be doing the transformation. We're not going to be elevating if there's nowhere to elevate toward. So you need that gap between the ideal and the action in order that we lift it up to that place. If we remove that gap and this becomes equivocated, if the physical world becomes totally equivocated with the higher reality, then we're not going to transform. We're going to be sunk into and not lift up. To lift up, you need that leverage, you need that space to lift up. Hope that made sense. Tomorrow we're going to do again. We'll pick it up from here, and I'll tell you about the specific areas of conflict, and we'll learn the next part of the dramatic story, the confrontation between Moses and Korach. Any questions on this? Questions or comments?
Hi, I was asking when you were talking about we need spiritual leadership to look to, and I was wondering, do we go directly to the Torah as individuals, or our rabbis are spiritual leaders?
The rabbis shouldn't be any different than the Torah. If the Torah is saying one thing and rabbis are saying something else, find yourself new rabbis. So the answer should be Torah. Rabbis should not be saying anything other than Torah. So the answer is it's about Torah, which is what Hashem wants. So the point here is, yeah, that's the answer. That's the short answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Rabbi Ari.
Sure.
Years ago, I wrote the Devar Torah on this very parsha, and I found a couple of things.
Nice.
One in particular was how could Korach do what he did? Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but how could he? And one of the answers was that he had the gift of prophecy, and he saw that Samuel would be a descendant of his. And I just now was checking that the accuracy of my memory on Chabad.org, and it also says that Korach was a great grandson of Levi, who was one of Jacob's sons themselves. And so same thing. So that, as you were saying, he took that information with his thoughts and his speech. It was in his brain, and then he moved his action into that which was out of balance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well stated. He was not a simple guy. He was a very, very, he was very attuned. Like I said, the Rebbe says we can learn a lot from him in a positive way about ambition, but the way he went about it. He also had very good ideas. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the philosophy of Korach. He wasn't a simple dude. He wasn't just like, hey, I want power. It was a very sophisticated approach. He went about it wrong. But the more we learn about it, the more we'll learn, hopefully, about how to be inspired by Korach to, in a good way, not to make the same mistakes that he made, but to find the good within him and use that good for us as well. All right, I will. It's a little bit late past our normal time. Thank you for joining me today. For those of you that are joining tonight, 8 p.m. Yiddish class. For those of you that are not yet signed up, tomorrow night we launch a brand new course called Life After Life, crossing over, afterlife, heaven and hell, reincarnation, resurrection, Tchiyat HaMesim. All of these topics will be explored in this course. So if you wonder what awaits, in a while, not soon, but in a while. If you're wondering, then join me tomorrow night, 8 p.m. It's going to be magnificent. All right, more information on our website, intownjewishacademy.org, as always. Thank you. It's great to see you all. And have a wonderful day. Lots of blessings, lots of good health. Bye, everybody. See you guys.
Rabbi.
Take care.